I have a confession to make. I was a gentrifier, and it took me a long time to realize it. For those of you who aren't familiar, gentrification is the result, if not the intention, of working in rundown urban neighborhoods, of cleaning them up and improving them in such a way that makes them attractive to yuppies, muppies, and people like me. I'm one of those people. I love urban living, and I have a long history of using the arts to create social issues and public conversations resulting in measurable change. Fixing neighborhoods is my thing, and I've been good at it. I've accomplished a lot and won many awards. I created a vibrant arts center, a nationally ranked high school, and an urban living center designed to connect people. I make no apologies for the things I've accomplished. My work and the work of many other people have transformed a blighted area into a desirable place. That's good. The question is, good for whom? Good for me and my family? Absolutely. Good for the property values of the people who live in the neighborhood? Of course. Good for the developers and the merchants? You bet. However, gentrification typically means making a neighborhood more appealing to the people moving in at the expense of the people who already live there. Because when you improve a neighborhood and increase the property values, it often means the existing residents can't afford it anymore. People who've lived in a place for years suddenly feel unwanted in their own neighborhood. This is the cost of gentrification. Fortunately for me, my work was recognized, which brought opportunities in other neighborhoods. A few years ago, I was approached by the King Park Development Corporation about helping to revitalize their neighborhood. Much of the neighborhood was a picture of urban blight, with blocks of boarded-up houses, vacant lots, and empty storefronts. But the neighborhood wasn't empty, and the people who lived there had a rich history. Working with these neighbors, I began to sense a fear of the future, of gentrification, of being erased. These neighbors weren't against improvement, but they weren't sure that they would have a place in the future. They longed for the past, the good old days when people sat on their porches, walked to school, and knew their neighbors. Fixing up the neighborhood with amazing art, renovated homes, and good schools wasn't going to give them their heart's desire. What our neighbors really wanted was to be known and loved. And that's when I realized that there are two kinds of gentrification. There's economic gentrification that improves a neighborhood and pushes people out due to higher taxes and rents, but there's also cultural gentrification. And this is when a neighborhood where people feel unwelcome in their own homes, when neighborhoods get trendy new names, and new neighbors treat the neighborhood as a blank slate, erasing the story. My good work had made people feel unwelcome in their own neighborhood. I didn't know how to revitalize a neighborhood without gentrifying it. And that's when I got kind of a crazy idea. I wondered if theater could help us all. You see, the neighbors' longing for the good old days led me to the idea of doing a theatrical reenactment. What if we were to bring the past back to life like they do at a living history museum? Wouldn't that show the neighbors that we were listening? But as we discussed it, I wondered if we all have a tendency to romanticize the past. The good old days really weren't that good. The past was filled with even more severe versions of the inequities that we struggle with today. A reenactment might make people feel good for a moment, but it wouldn't cast a vision for the future. So we brainstormed. How could we inspire a new form of neighborhood revitalization where the past is honored, but a just and equitable future is modeled? I was frustrated. Reenactment wasn't good enough. And then my friend Risa got a big smile on her face, and she looked at me and said, pre-enactment. What our neighborhood really needs is a pre-enactment. Except that there wasn't any such thing. There was no living museum of future history to show our neighbors the possibilities. So we invented it. we invented a new form of theater called pre-enactment theater to envision the neighborhood the way it ought to be, just and economically vibrant. To do so, we partnered with 13 theater companies, and we created a day-long, interactive, site-specific performance where people from different races and backgrounds all enjoyed good schools and housing and quality of life amenities, where everyone was known and everyone was loved. To be honest, we didn't know all the steps we would take to reach this amazing future. But by using theater, we were figuring it out by acting it out. Pre-enactment theater would give us a model of something to work toward and try on. Our script was based in historical reality. Residents' oral histories provided insight for the theater groups into a neighborhood that was torn apart by social issues and literally cut in half by the interstate. We weren't trying to mask these issues. We weren't trying to make the neighborhood look pretty. We were trying to understand the real story. There was a massive undertaking of community engagement. We talked to the neighbors. We asked them what they were longing for, and we collected over 60 common hopes and dreams for the future. Then we went to work writing the script, designing the sets. The stage was a 3-block commercial strip. Every vacant lot, every abandoned building, every lane of the street, and every sidewalk was part of the production. This is a map of the stage. Don't squint, don't try and read it. The point is, the stage was so big, it took an army of 13 theater companies and 20 community partners to activate it. And then this included the set designers who built 11 temporary buildings on the vacant lots and activated the vacant storefronts. As we were getting ready for this, 3 of the vacant storefronts were purchased by new owners. A trendy restaurant, a whiskey distillery. Oh no, I thought, gentrification has already happened. It's too late. But then I realized that pre-enactment was needed more than ever. And so I went to those businesses and I said, how are you going to pre-enact? How are you going to change your business practices to be more equitable? How are you going to love your neighbors? And at first they looked at me like I was crazy, but within a month, they all responded in amazing ways. They wanted to pre-enact. They wanted to engage. Then I realized something. I was running around telling other people to pre-enact, but I needed to pre-enact. I needed to change the way I behaved. I needed to be the kind of person that knows and loves my neighbors. I began to see some things in myself, in my own heart, that needed to change. I continued my planning, but with a greater sense of humility. Performance day arrived, and over 4,000 people came. We calmed traffic by narrowing the lanes and building a cafe with outdoor seating in the middle of the street. Do you think we were the first to get a government permit for people to sit in the middle of a busy street? I think we might have been. You see, we had to make the point that every neighbor needs to pre-enact to show respect, including drivers. We gave bikers, walkers, and motorists beautiful art to look at. Instead of billboards displaying fast food ads, we reclaimed them as frames for art to celebrate the neighborhood story. But what made it really successful was that each set gave us a vision for what ought to be. A neighborhood of engaged citizens was acted out at Speaker's Corner, where politicians and spoken word artists and school children gave speeches about equity and neighborhood issues. We cared about the details the neighbors cared about. They asked for basketball on street corners, and so basketball became part of the script. Another set depicted new condos in the neighborhood. Actors portraying residents talked about the changes we were pre-enacting and what it was like to have benefited from them as if they had already happened. We reopened the doors of the Dunbar branch, a historic African-American library that had been long closed, and we turned it into a community history center for the day to honor long-term neighbors. Even the church on the street played a part by inviting the whole community to a vow renewal, celebrating a neighborhood with stable and long-term relationships. Longtime neighbors felt honored. Former neighbors felt proud. New neighbors and visitors felt inspired. The neighborhood wasn't viewed as a blank slate, but as a story that all were entered into. We created pre-enactment theater to inspire people, But what we didn't expect were the hard changes that are living on. Businesses changed the way they did business by committing to hire local. One is paying a living wage. Another is making their product more accessible to low-income neighbors. Others are featuring art that celebrates the neighborhood and honors the residents. More than that, neighbors are now rediscovering the lost art of porching. Yes, it's a verb now. And others have started a community garden. You've seen my pictures, you've heard my description of the performance, but I want to show a clip, a short clip, from that day that we called Pre-enact Indy.
Somehow we've got to find a way to recognize how we got here today in order for us to understand where we ought to go. Yes. In order for us to form new realities, to form new normals, to help create a neighborhood we've never seen before for our children and our children's children, for our children and our children's children. Form a new normal, new normal, new normal, new normal. Yeah, I know you, 'cause you look just like my brother. Yeah, and I know you, that you look just like my sister. No, and together we can make new realities. Let's say together we can form a new normal, new normal, new normal.
The question remains, will the pre-enactment vision fade? Will the neighborhood fall into historic patterns? After all, change is normal. Neighborhoods gentrify when they have resources, but they don't have vision. Neighborhoods decline when they don't have resources and don't have vision. But what if we could create a new normal? Neighborhoods with both resources and vision. This could happen if we pre-enact, not just for a one-day performance, but 365 days of the year, by loving our neighbors, changing our practices, and celebrating our stories. It starts with the individual, but together we can pre-enact a new normal. Thank you.